Welcome to Mr. Night Horrors. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join the Nightmare crew. Now, let's begin. So where do I even begin? I've been asked that question more times than I can count, and I still don't know how to answer. I guess it all starts with me and Alex, friends for longer than I can remember. We grew up in northern New Jersey, pretty average when it comes down to it. Nothing out of the ordinary. Upper middle class, maybe a bit more than that. The type of people who spend their summers at the shore. It's funny how you never think much of your life until something shakes it all up, makes you realize how fragile everything really is. My family's place was in Marlow Beach, a quiet spot that had its charm. Alex's was over in Coral Bay, a little further down the coast. We'd spend a lot of time bouncing between the two, living the usual shore life, surfing, hanging out, never really doing much else. Not that it was bad, mind you. It was just normal. That night though, something felt different. It wasn't like the others. I can't pinpoint exactly why it felt off, but it did. We weren't heading to any party. It wasn't one of those nights where the whole beach was alive, crowded with people, loud music, and everything else that came with it. No, we were skipping all that. Just Alex and me, grabbing a few beers and heading to the beach. I don't know why we chose to do that, why we skipped out on the usual chaos. Maybe we were just tired of it, wanted some peace, but I can't shake the feeling that it wasn't peace we were looking for. It was something else, something quieter, something darker. Looking back now, I can't help but wonder if it was the calm. I don't know what it was about that night. Something felt different from the start, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Alex insisted on going further down the shore than we usually did. Way past the usual spots we'd hit, all the way to some remote part I hadn't been to in a while. And for some reason, I didn't question it. I mean, what else was I doing? Just another night at the beach. Maybe it was the idea of getting away from everything, escaping the usual noise of the crowds and the chaos. I figured, what harm could it do? But looking back, I still don't get why Alex pushed for it. It's like he was looking for something, maybe trying to find some quiet, or maybe even running from something. I never asked him. Not then, and even now, I can't bring myself to. There's something unsettling about that, now that I think about it. Anyway, we grabbed bikes from his garage and set off down the coast. It didn't take long before we were pedaling through roads that were more and more desolate. The kind of place you only really go when you're trying to escape the usual crowd. We ended up at this dark stretch of beach. I'm not even sure what made Alex pick it, but there we were. No cars parked along the road, no streetlights, no houses with their lights on, just an empty stretch of sand, the waves crashing against the shore. It was eerie, yet strangely peaceful. The sound of the ocean filled the air, and in a way it felt safe. No one would bother us here. No one could see us. We could just be alone. It was one of those moments where I should have felt like something was wrong, but I didn't. In fact, I kind of liked it. The truth is, I didn't care at that moment. I was too busy sinking into the quiet, convincing myself that maybe I was just overthinking things. But that nagging feeling was still there, even if I couldn't yet figure out why. As we made our way closer to the beach, that's when I first noticed them. The footprints. At first, I didn't think much of it. Probably someone had walked here earlier, right? It wasn't like we were the only ones who'd ever come to this beach. But as I took a closer look, something didn't sit right. The prints were spaced oddly, too far apart to be natural. It was like whoever made them was walking with some purpose, but it wasn't a normal stride. Maybe I was overthinking it, but the more I stared at them, the more they bothered me. Some of the tracks led toward the dunes, and then they just stopped. No further footprints, no sign of anyone coming back the other way. I remember staring at that gap, wondering how that made sense. Where did they go? Did they just vanish? It was like the person or thing had simply walked right off the edge of the earth. I tried to brush it off. I really did. It's fine, I told myself. It's just someone else who came here earlier, that's all. But the thought nagged at me, like a slow drip of cold water down my spine. Why would someone stop there? Why not keep walking? Why leave no trace beyond the dunes? I glanced at Alex, but he didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he just didn't care. He was already moving toward the sand, setting down his bike like it was just another evening by the water. I wanted to bring it up, say something, ask him if he thought it was strange too, but I didn't. I didn't want to sound paranoid. I didn't want to ruin the night, especially since it was already feeling like a strange kind of peace. Still, as I walked past those footprints, I couldn't shake the feeling that I should have said something, that I should have left, but I didn't. We came to the beach for one reason: to unwind, to do nothing for a while. No parties, no noise, just us, a couple of beers, and the quiet of the night. It seemed like a perfect plan. I guess we needed it too. We'd been caught up in so many nights of wild partying, chasing after noise, always looking for the next thing to keep us entertained. But tonight was different. The idea was simple. Just relax. Just let the night be calm. And for a while, it was calm. The sand beneath me felt cold against my skin as I lay back, watching the stars. The ocean waves rolled in with their rhythmic sound, the wind rustling through the air. I could hear nothing else. It should have been perfect. A moment I should have just let myself enjoy, right? But then, it wasn't perfect. I heard it before Alex did. At first it was so faint, I wasn't sure if I imagined it. It was a buzz. No, not quite a buzz, more like a soft, metallic hum, the kind of sound you might hear from lights flickering. But it wasn't that either. It was different. It was so subtle at first that I tried to ignore it. I thought, maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was just something natural, a trick of the sound in the air. But the thing is, it didn't go away. It lingered. It didn't fade or shift. It just stayed there, a presence in the air. I could feel it, a sort of unease creeping up my spine. Maybe it was just my imagination, right? But I swear, I felt like something was wrong. I wasn't sure why, but I knew. Even before Alex said anything, I could feel the shift. I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid one, who thinks there's something off when there's nothing there. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling. And then, just like that, the sound shifted. It wasn't just there anymore, barely noticeable in the background. It grew, and I don't know how to explain it, but it was like someone had just turned up the volume on whatever the hell was making that noise. It was sudden, almost violent, like the volume knob was cranked, and now it was impossible to ignore. It felt real, almost too real. I looked over at Alex. His eyes were wide, and he was definitely hearing it too. We both froze. The sound was loud, too loud for the quiet of the night, and it was way too close. It came from the right. I could tell that much. But that's where everything stopped making sense. No matter how I turned my head, no matter how much I searched through the dark, I couldn't find the source. The sound didn't feel like it was coming from one point. It felt like it was coming from everywhere, surrounding us somehow. But no matter where I looked, nothing at all. And I felt it too. It was like it was following us. Not physically, not in a way that made sense. But somehow, I just knew. The more I tried to shake it off, the louder it got. Like it was zeroing in on us. I kept thinking, maybe it was some weird equipment from one of the beach houses further down. Maybe it was a plane overhead. But even as I tried to make sense of it, my mind kept tripping over itself. It didn't add up. It wasn't making sense. And with every second, it grew louder, closer, more real. My pulse quickened. Was someone messing with us? Was there someone out there, just waiting, watching? The questions piled up, one after another, faster than I could even think about them. I didn't know what to believe anymore. It wasn't right. None of it was. Then, it happened. The drone didn't just stay static. It didn't linger. It grew, and not gradually, not in any kind of natural progression. It exploded in volume, like someone suddenly dropped a bomb right next to us. It was overwhelming, unbearable. My chest tightened, and I could feel the thumping of my heart echo in my ears, drowning out everything else. I didn't even know what we were running from, but I could feel it. Something was out there, something wrong. I didn't need to ask Alex. I didn't need to speak. We just reacted. We started running. No plan. No purpose, just instinct. My feet hit the sand hard, and I couldn't stop glancing over my shoulder, even though I knew I wouldn't see anything. I couldn't not look. Every step I took was heavier than the last, but my body kept moving, pushing me forward toward the dunes. The air felt thick, too thick, like something was pressing down on us, pulling at us, making every breath harder to take. We reached the foot of the dune, and I could hear my breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps, but it didn't matter. The sound was so close now, but still, when I turned to look behind us, there was nothing, not at first. It was like we were running from something invisible, something I couldn't see but could feel creeping up on us. And that feeling, that weight in my chest, told me we weren't alone anymore. I kept running, my thoughts a blur of confusion and panic. Why weren't we hearing anything? Why couldn't we see anything? But the dread kept building. There was no mistaking it. Something was out there, something following us. We weren't just running for our lives. We were running from something that knew exactly where we were, and I couldn't tell if it was getting closer or if we were just getting crazier with fear. And then it happened. Right as we were halfway to the dunes, Alex suddenly stops. He grabs my shoulder, so forcefully I nearly fall forward. His eyes widen, his mouth slightly open, but there's no sound. I turn and I follow his gaze. My blood turns to ice. There, on top of the dune, standing perfectly still, was someone, but it wasn't a person, at least not the kind of person I knew. It was tall, unnaturally tall, its arms hanging down, reaching almost to its knees, and it wasn't moving, not at all. It was just there, watching us from the top of the dune, like it had been waiting for us the entire time. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even think. I felt like I was paralyzed, my mind screaming at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My gaze was locked on it, and everything else just faded away. Alex, though, he snapped me out of it. Without saying a word, he yanked me away, pulling me into motion. We ran, not toward the safety of the house, but toward another dune, anything to get away. My head was spinning. We weren't even thinking anymore. It was all instinct. The bikes? Forgotten. I wasn't even sure I cared anymore. When we reached the next dune, we dared to look back, and that's when I saw them, more of them. They were all over the slope now, each one standing motionless, their forms barely visible in the darkness. But it didn't matter. We couldn't stop. We didn't even slow down. We just ran, harder than I've ever run in my life. By the time we got home, I felt like I couldn't breathe, couldn't stop shaking. The next day, we went back to see if our bikes were still there, but they weren't. No sign of them anywhere. I still can't explain what happened that night. Those figures, that buzzing sound, the way everything felt wrong. Maybe I never will. It's been eating at me ever since, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. I wish I could. It's hard to believe it was just a regular Saturday night, but that's how it started. We weren't looking for anything special, not really. It was just another one of those nights where everything seemed set as if by default. I had this vision of the evening in my head. Something easy, something simple. Liam and Noah, my two best friends. And then Kate and Emma, the two girls who had been part of our group for a while now. No pretenses. We'd already passed that point in the friendship where we were trying to impress anyone. The plan was clear. Head to the beach, hang out, have a few drinks. There was nothing complicated about it. It should have been a perfect night. I remember the drive. The windows were down, the salty air creeping in, mixing with the sound of our laughter and the casual chatter. We were all talking about anything and nothing at the same time, catching up, joking, barely aware of the world outside the car. The kind of conversation where you don't need to focus on the words, just the rhythm of it all. At the time, I thought nothing could go wrong. What could? It was just a night at the beach, right? I should have thought more about it though. Should have questioned why I felt a certain unease building up slowly but surely in the pit of my stomach. Maybe it was just nerves, or the excitement of being close to graduation, who knows. But if I had listened to that feeling, that little voice in my head telling me to turn back, maybe things would have turned out differently. But I didn't, and that was the first mistake. The plan was simple, and I thought that was enough. It wasn't, and I should have known that then. I don't know why, but I can still feel that first weird shift in the air. The moment things went from relaxed to something else. Something wrong. It wasn't anything major at first. Just the atmosphere changing in a way I couldn't explain. We were walking down the beach, the sound of the waves and the sand underfoot like any other night. But then Emma started acting off. It wasn't her usual vibe. She was jumpy, like something had startled her. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, we were all drunk, and people get weird when they're drinking, right? But then she spoke up, almost whispering, and I could hear the edge in her voice. She said she heard something. At first, I figured it was just the alcohol talking. She was probably imagining things. But then she stopped, stood still, and her eyes were scanning the dark beach like she was trying to pin down whatever it was. I brushed it off. No big deal, right? Just Emma being Emma. But then I heard it. It wasn't loud at first, barely audible over the sound of the waves, but there was definitely something. A low hum like the sound of a small engine. A buzz that seemed to float just above the rhythm of the ocean. I felt it crawl under my skin, like the kind of sound that doesn't belong. It was unnerving, but I couldn't place why. I tried to ignore it at first, to convince myself that it was nothing, that it was just the wind or something in the distance. But there it was again, sharper now. And then for some reason I wasn't scared. Not yet. I should have been. I should have felt something more than just the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, but I didn't. Maybe I thought I was being paranoid. Maybe I thought the night was too good, too easy, to let anything spoil it. I didn't listen to that nagging feeling though. I didn't act, and that's when the night really started slipping away from us. It wasn't until Emma pointed up at the sky that the full weight of it hit me, and even then, I didn't know what to make of it. I remember her hand trembling in the air, her finger aimed at something just above us. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. I thought she was just freaking out for no reason. But then I followed her gaze. I squinted into the night, trying to make sense of it. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, something in my vision that wasn't really there. But then, as I focused, I saw it clearly. A drone. It was hovering above us, unmoving, just sitting there like it had all the time in the world. My stomach twisted, a cold rush flooding through me. I remember feeling like I'd been slapped, but also like I was underwater, unable to move or speak. How had it gotten there? Why was it there? My mind raced through 100 possibilities, none of them good. The noise from earlier suddenly made sense. That buzzing hum I'd written off as nothing. It had been the drone. I hadn't even noticed it in the moment, too distracted by the night, by the company. But now it felt like I had missed something obvious, something I should have noticed. I couldn't think straight. The drone stayed still for what felt like forever, like it was watching us, analyzing us from the sky. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it zipped upward into the darkness, disappearing without a trace. I couldn't process it right away. I didn't want to. I tried to convince myself it wasn't a big deal, that it was just some random person flying a drone on the beach. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I should have been scared. Hell, I should have run. But instead, I stayed there, frozen, watching the spot where it had been. And that's when I realized that everything about that night had just shifted in a way I couldn't undo. I don't know why I even looked at my phone. Maybe it was just some strange impulse, some unconscious need to distract myself after everything that had already happened. I should have been trying to shake it off, to brush the whole thing aside. But there it was, a notification that made my blood run cold. AirTag found moving with you. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling, trying to make sense of it. My mind couldn't wrap around the words. What the hell did that even mean? My heart didn't just race, it froze in my chest. It was like something clicked into place, and suddenly the whole night was bathed in an ominous light I hadn't seen before. It was like I had missed a step, a moment, and now I was paying for it. I couldn't get rid of the gnawing feeling in my gut, the sense that someone had been tracking us. And that's when the need to check the car hit me. I don't know why, it didn't make sense at the time, but I had to. I remember walking toward the car, the weight of the night pressing down on me with every step. The parking lot felt more desolate now, darker, like it was holding its breath. When I knelt down and peeled back a bit of tape under the bumper, I found it, that small, innocuous device, a tiny AirTag, stuck there, like it had been planted. left behind in the quietest way possible. I stared at it, my mind going blank, panic beginning to rise. Who put it there? Why? The fact that it was so perfectly hidden, so deliberately out of sight, made it clear someone had been watching us. Someone had been watching me. The weight of it settled over me then, like a blanket of dread, suffocating in its finality. And the worst part, I didn't know who. I didn't know who had been tracking me, but I knew they were still out there, somewhere, and now nothing would ever feel safe again. I kept telling myself to calm down, to pretend like everything was okay, but I wasn't fooling anyone, least of all myself. I could feel the anxiety creeping up in my chest, tightening my throat with every breath. But Liam's place, well, it seemed like the best option. We needed somewhere safe, even if we couldn't explain why. The basement, dim and cramped, felt like it could hide us from whatever was out there. Or at least that's what we hoped. We sprawled out on the couches, trying to sleep off the night's events. The problem was, sleep didn't come easy. Every small noise, the hum of the furnace, the old pipes groaning under the weight of the house, had my heart racing. I kept thinking I heard footsteps upstairs, even though I knew we were alone. But what if we weren't? What if someone else was in the house? Right then, the thought was suffocating, clawing at the back of my mind, making it impossible to relax. I kept my eyes open in the dark, listening to the creaks and moans of the old house, trying to figure out if it was just the house settling, or if someone was actually there. But I couldn't focus. The sound of my own breathing seemed too loud, like everything had shifted somehow, and the world outside felt more dangerous than I had ever realized. None of us said anything out loud, but we all knew. We were awake, in the dark, and none of us felt safe. And the worst part, we all tried to ignore it, to tell ourselves it would pass. But it didn't. It never did. The fear, that constant feeling of being watched, stayed with us, creeping in even when the lights were off and the house was silent. It lingered like a shadow that wouldn't leave, no matter how hard we tried to push it away. It was strange how time seemed to blur after that night. Weeks passed, and I convinced myself it was all behind us, that we'd made it out, that we were just a few victims of some weird prank, or maybe some creep who thought it was funny to mess with us. I kept repeating that to myself, trying to calm the gnawing anxiety that wouldn't quite let go. But deep down I knew that wasn't true. I should have known it wasn't over. The feeling of being watched, of someone lingering just outside our lives, it didn't vanish. It festered. Then Liam called me that morning. I'll never forget how his voice sounded. It wasn't the same. The usual warmth, the casual tone, it was gone. I remember thinking, oh no, not again. And then he said he had something for me, something I didn't want to hear. He sent me a picture. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. But the longer I stared at it, the more I realized what it was. It was blurry, grainy, but still enough to send a chill down my spine. It was a picture of us on the beach. That beach, from weeks ago. We were there, just like I remembered, laughing, not a care in the world. But the picture, the way it was taken, the angle, the distance. It was as if someone had been watching us. Someone who knew exactly where we were, who had been right there with us, but we never saw them. I didn't want to believe it, but the truth hit me like a cold slap. Who had taken those pictures? How did they know where we'd be? And more than anything, why? The police were no help, of course. They didn't take us seriously, said there was nothing they could do. But I couldn't shake the thought. It kept gnawing at me, haunting me like a ghost that wouldn't leave. Who was out there? Who was watching us? And why was this happening to us? The questions kept piling up, no answers in sight. It felt like we were in the middle of something bigger, something we didn't fully understand. It wasn't over. I know I keep telling myself it's behind us, that we made it out, but it never feels like that. That night, it hit me again. The same dread, the same paranoia that's been eating at me from the inside out. I was driving, Liam in the passenger seat, the others in the back. We were on our way to nowhere, just trying to get away, trying to outrun whatever this was. But then it happened again. The car. At first, I thought I was imagining it. I'd caught a glimpse of headlights in the rearview mirror, too far to be anything serious. I tried to shake it off, but I kept seeing it, just a shadow in the dark, a set of headlights too distant to make any sense of, and then it got closer. I swear to God, I saw it. It wasn't immediate, but it was there, tailing us from a distance, like it was trying to stay hidden, blending into the night. At first, I thought maybe it was just some random person out for a late-night drive, but something in my gut said no. It wasn't just a coincidence. I tried to lose it. I took a series of random turns, sped through unfamiliar streets, hoping to throw it off. My heart was pounding in my chest, my grip tightening around the steering wheel. But no matter what I did, that damn car stayed with me. It didn't matter where I went or how fast I drove, it was still there. And that's when I started to panic. Just as quickly as it had appeared, it was gone. Vanished. No more headlights in the mirror. No more shadow lurking behind me. I slowed down, taking a deep breath, trying to calm my racing thoughts. But even now, as I try to rationalize it, I can't shake the feeling that it was never really gone. Maybe it was just waiting for me to let my guard down. Maybe it's still out there. Or maybe it was just my mind, playing tricks on me. But I can't forget the feeling. The one where you know you're being followed, even if you can't prove it. It's like a cold hand on your spine. Always there, always lingering. And that thought, it never goes away. I don't know if I'm still being watched, but I can't shake the feeling that I am. Beaches never used to scare me. In fact, they felt like the safest places in the world, wide open, with nowhere for danger to hide. I used to think that if anything bad ever happened, at least you could see it coming, but I don't think that anymore. I guess it changed slowly, over one of those weekends that starts out too perfect to ever stay that way. It was just me, Liam, and Mason. We were 17, maybe 18. Mason had just gotten his license and insisted on driving us down to Liam's family beach house in Seabrook. His driving was trash, jerky turns, late breaks, weird lane decisions, but we didn't care. We were laughing the whole time, half because of how bad he was, and half because it felt like we were finally old enough to do something on our own. It was that early summer air, still cool enough to feel clean. I remember thinking that everything just lined up right. Music up, windows down, no parents, no rules. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly like I remembered it from the year before, but something felt different. Maybe it was just that we were older, or maybe it was something I couldn't quite place yet. The place had this strange setup, tight corners, sliding doors in the back, that spiral staircase that ran from the upper deck straight to the waterline. It used to seem cool to me, like some kind of secret escape route. I don't know, maybe it was. I didn't think much about how easy it would be for someone to move through that house unnoticed. Not then, anyway. It's strange what your brain decides to forget in the moment. What it lets drift past you like it didn't matter. There was this voicemail. Liam mentioned it offhand. Something his neighbor had left that afternoon. He was scrolling through his phone while we were unpacking the car, half listening to whatever nonsense the guy had said. Probably just another heads up about water levels, Liam had joked. But I remember there was a pause, just this small hesitation when he said the neighbor mentioned seeing someone near the dock earlier. I didn't press it. None of us did. It didn't even seem like a red flag at the time, just background noise. We were too wrapped up in everything else. Who was around that weekend? Who might stop by? Whether we had enough to drink or if Mason had actually remembered everything. Just dumb stuff. The kind of stuff that feels like the center of the world when you're 17 and clueless. Looking back, I keep circling that voicemail. We never replayed it. Liam deleted it, I think. Or maybe it got buried under notifications and just disappeared. It wasn't until days later that it came back to me. That weird moment when he hesitated before brushing it off. I can't explain why it bothers me so much. Maybe it's because it was so easy to ignore. Or maybe it's because it might have been the one moment we could have done something different. Not that I know what that would have been. What could we have done, really? I still don't know if that message even mattered. But it stays with me anyway, like something unfinished. It started like every other summer night that felt too good to be real. We had drinks, and somehow we'd managed to meet a group of girls who actually said yes to coming by. I think their names were Tessa, Marina, and Lily, though honestly I can't say for sure anymore. It's funny how the details that should stick fade out, and the stuff you wish you could forget ends up burned into your head. We were out by the pool in the back, this little heated thing tucked behind the house right up against the water, the kind of setup that screams teenage freedom. We passed drinks around like we were invincible, like this was the life we'd been waiting for. I leaned back in the pool and just stared at the stars. The steam rose slowly, mixing with laughter, and for a second it felt like the world had no sharp edges, like it would all just stay like that forever. But something shifted. It was subtle. Liam turned the music down. No announcement, no warning. I didn't even notice at first. I was still floating in that haze when I realized he wasn't talking, wasn't laughing. He was staring across the water, out toward the dock on the other side of the lagoon, just standing there, watching something. I don't know why, but in that moment, everything around us felt thinner, like the air itself had changed. I remember thinking it was probably nothing. People live on that side too. Maybe someone was just out late. But even back then, before anything had happened, I could feel it. Something was off, and we hadn't even begun to understand how off it really was. I don't know how long they were there before we finally noticed them. 4 shapes. Tall, unmoving, just standing at the edge of the dock across the lagoon. At first, they were just figures in the distance, too blurry to make out any real details. But they didn't belong there. I knew that much instantly. You could feel it even from across the water. They were all facing us, staring like they were waiting for something. I tried to brush it off. People live over there, right? I think I said it to myself as much as anyone else. But the words didn't land like they should have. The usual calm of the water, the rustling of the trees in the breeze, all of it seemed to freeze in that moment. Everything felt too still, too intentional, like we were the ones being watched, not the other way around. I don't even remember who else noticed them first, or if we all caught on at once. But when we did, it felt like the air thickened. The way they stood there, so motionless, so focused, just didn't sit right. My skin started to crawl. It shouldn't have. Not with the warm night air, not with the heat still rising off the water, but it did anyway, and the sensation was too sharp to ignore. We couldn't see their faces, couldn't make out what they were wearing or why they stood so perfectly still. They might have been nothing, just another group of people out late, but it didn't feel like nothing. Not at all. It felt like they were waiting for us to notice. And the more I stared at them, the more I felt like I wished I hadn't. We were all climbing out of the pool, still laughing, still pretending like everything was fine, when I heard it, the sound of water shifting, splash after splash, slow and deliberate, like someone swimming with purpose. It wasn't the usual sound of a late-night swim, the kind that echoes with carefree noise. No, this was different. There was something too rhythmic about it, too calculated. At first, it didn't click. I thought maybe it was some animal or debris floating in the water, but then it hit me, harder than any splash. The shapes across the lagoon weren't just standing anymore. They were moving, swimming, coming straight toward us. That's when everything broke, when that tight knot of unease finally turned into something real. Mason bolted for the sliding door, locking it in a panic, his face gone pale. Liam ran to check the front door, locking that too. We didn't even speak. It didn't feel like there was time for words. We all ended up huddled in the downstairs room, the one with no windows, no view of the water, the one that felt the safest, the furthest from the lagoon, the furthest from whatever the hell was happening. I remember trying to steady my breathing. It was like I couldn't catch my breath, and my heart was drumming so loudly in my chest. I thought everyone else could hear it too. The silence in the room was deafening, but all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears, pounding like it was trying to drown out the real noise. I kept telling myself they'd leave. They had to. It wasn't real. Maybe we were just freaking out for no reason. But deep down I knew we were wrong. I knew this was only just beginning. We were so focused on the doors below, on locking everything down as quickly as possible, that we completely forgot about the upstairs sliding door. It's the one that opens right off the back deck, directly from the spiral staircase. It never even occurred to us. I didn't even think about it until Mason cursed under his breath, his voice sharp with panic. "I didn't check the upstairs door," he muttered. And just like that, the air felt colder. I don't know if it was the fear of what we might hear or if it was just the fact that we were all so strung out, but for a few seconds none of us moved. I didn't even want to breathe, not in case it made the footsteps above us louder. That sound, slow, dragging steps, rang through the house like someone testing the weight of every footstep before making the next. It wasn't until the sound hit me fully that I felt that rush of paralysis. I remember staring at the walls, at the empty space around us, wondering how we ended up here. We had nothing, no weapons, no way to defend ourselves. None of us were sharp. We were all high, drunk, and stupid, a perfect mix for something terrible. And even if I had been sober, what would I have done? Run? Hide? I didn't know. Staying wasn't an option. It felt worse to stay still than to move, even though I didn't know where we'd go. So we ran. Mason was the first to bolt, backing up toward the front door. I'm not sure what he hit, but I heard a loud crash, some bin, I think. It didn't matter. I was too focused on staying upright, on keeping pace with the others, making sure I wasn't left behind. We had to get out, and that was the only thought I had left. Get out. The police showed up soon after we called. It felt like forever before they arrived, like every minute dragged on and stretched out in those silent, breathless moments. They took our statements, asked questions we didn't have answers to, and searched the house. They found a few things missing: electronics, some jewelry, Liam's dad's boat. The boat was gone. I didn't want to believe it at first, but when they told us the spare key was probably taken from the latch under the steering column, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd missed something big. It was a small, hidden latch, the kind only someone who knew the house well would think to check. Someone who knew Liam's family. That thought kept me awake for days. How could they have known about the key? About the house? Was it someone they trusted? Someone who'd been watching the place for longer than we realized. It felt like a puzzle I couldn't solve, but I kept turning it over in my mind, trying to find the pieces that made it all fit. There were too many questions, too many possibilities, and no answers. No one was ever caught. No one even got questioned. As far as I know, it was like they just vanished into thin air, as if they'd never been there at all. But it's the not knowing, the unanswered questions, that still haunt me. That feeling of being watched, of being too exposed. I lock everything now, always. Even when I'm awake, even when the sun is up, and I should feel safe. But I don't, not really. It's like I'm still waiting for them to come back, still trying to figure out who they were, and maybe I always will.